Welcome, everyone, to the Fortimize Focus Series. I'm Jim Collins, your moderator for today's virtual event and a member of the Fortimize Banking Advisory Board. I'm joined on today's call by Larson Chung, our banking industry leader here at Fortimize. We're excited to have all of you on here for our second webinar of this series. And we're going to have an excellent conversation about platform and technology solutions that are driving digital transformation with our four esteemed panelists. But before we meet our panelists, I want to define the purpose of the Fortimize Focus Series for those of you who might have missed our first webinar. At Fortimize, we're really trying to create a learning series to support a community of peer banks and credit unions, and to help this community build out their ever-changing digital transformation roadmaps. And along the way, we're going to share some best practices and innovative ideas based on real experience to help each other succeed, especially during this global pandemic. This is going to be an enlightening series for everyone, and today is going to be filled with insight and information you will definitely be able to use within your organization. So now let's meet our panelists and learn more about them and their organizations. First, Alex Baligore from Customers Bank. Alex?
Good afternoon, Jim. Good to be here. I'm Alex Baligore, CIO of Customers Bank. We are a predominantly commercial bank with a national footprint and strong roots in the Northeast. As of today, we're sitting at about $18 billion in assets, to some degree powered by PPP lending that we've done this year. And I'm happy to be here, Jim.
Alex, thanks for joining us today. Next, we'll go over to Annette Joyce from Canandaigua National Bank and Trust. Annette?
Good afternoon. I'm Annette Joyce, and I'm EVP of Technology and Project Management for Canandaigua National Bank and Trust. We are about $3.2 billion community bank in upstate New York. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Annette. Thanks for being here today. Next, Diane Brown from Penn Community Bank. Diane?
Hello, I'm Diane Brown. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer at Penn Community Bank. We're a $2.5 billion mutual bank headquartered in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Great. Diane, thanks for being here today.
Glad to do it.
And last but not least, Bob Deagle from Bank Mobile. Bob?
Folks, Bob Deagle, Chief Operating Officer of Bank Mobile, $800 million challenger neobank, currently in the space competing with Chime and Simple. I'm glad to be here.
Great, Bob. Thanks for joining us. Folks, as you can see today, we have representation from all different asset sizes, and most importantly, different geographical locations, including national distribution. We think this will be very helpful for our audience to hear from all these different perspectives and how they're tackling digital transformation and the different challenges they have faced thus far. So let's get into our discussion, and please feel free during this discussion, if you have any questions, to utilize the Q&A function, and we will do our best to make sure your questions get to our panelists during this conversation. We've already received 4 questions pre-webinar that we will build into our Q&A, so those questions will be answered. So first, Alex, I'm going to go back to you. Pre-COVID, every bank had a digital transformation roadmap. It included solutions and platforms that you were going to implement. At your bank, what was on that original roadmap and what changed because of COVID?
So COVID kind of hit in March, right? Maybe late February. And we were, just wrapped up our budgeting cycle and had what I would call traditional plans of what we're going to do through the year. We signed our DocuSign agreement in January, so that was on the agenda for 2020. We thought that maybe, end of the first quarter, second quarter, we're going to be in the pilot and rollout mode. We've certainly stepped up our game with Microsoft 365 licensing, and there was a lot of things like Teams and OneDrive that were on the agenda for the year. Again, without any significant sense of urgency, just something we thought would be the logical thing to do. From our customer perspective, we were in the middle of business online banking conversion, and 2020 was the year that we were going to also execute the consumer online banking platform transition as well. Within IT department, we were rolling out ServiceNow to just kind of like revamp how IT operations are executed by the bank. So it was, I don't want to say slow and measured, but certainly budget linked, premeditated, traditional planning exercise that we just wrapped up, and we were beginning to roll out the execution for the year. And I guess it's not going to be a surprise to anybody that kind of like everything got turned upside down. We ended up rolling out DocuSign in the span of 2 weeks. Microsoft Teams, after the March 11th, the first conference call that we had, right? The executive team was actually the pilot group for Microsoft Teams. We did it backwards, right? We had our executive team be the test group and give us feedback of how it worked, and rolled out to the entire company within the next 2 weeks. So a lot of things like that happen. I'm sure you've heard folks say that digital transformation got accelerated. A lot of the plans got reshuffled and accelerated in areas that either connected people better or took manual steps out of the customer interaction that required face-to-face interaction. So things like, again, DocuSign, Microsoft Teams are very hot in that first quarter.
Yeah, so Alex, you mentioned about the business online banking conversion. In the middle of it, how was your team able to pivot from that? During the conversion and the impact to our commercial customers that you have?
We were just going live with it. So we had a command center set up in one of the boardrooms. We, brought desktop computers with the staffing plan of how we're going to answer customer support inquiries. On the dime, we had to basically disassemble that and transition to a virtual world, right? Where we continued to execute the same strategy, but now people were doing it from their homes.
Yeah.
It was hectic. It was busy, but I think we haven't missed a beat, right? It actually put our customers in a better state by the time we migrate them to the new platform. A lot of them were actually very appreciative of additional capability that they had that no longer required a trip to a branch or to their relationship manager.
Excellent. Good. Alex, thank you. Annette, how about from your perspective? What was on your roadmap and what changed, because of COVID?
Yeah. So we had actually just finished a pretty large initiative to create a 5-year technology roadmap in 2019. And a big part of that was digital transformation initiatives with Salesforce and Encino. So as well as some other key projects that we needed to do for the year. We had a pretty aggressive plan for 2020. We actually were trying to be a big push to get onto the Salesforce platform with Salesforce Financial Services Cloud, Community Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Einstein Analytics, as well as MuleSoft. And we also had planned Encino for small business and commercial lending, all in 2020. And so we had a pretty big push, pretty aggressive schedule already. And then in March, when COVID hit and the shutdown here in New York happened, we were in the middle of, we'd started those implementation projects. We unfortunately weren't far enough along on the platform to take advantage of those for what we needed to do immediately for a pandemic response, with things like PPP and all of those other things that needed to happen. So we continued on and tried to keep those projects going as quickly as possible, but other initiatives had to kind of go on hold while we switched gears and really tried to ramp up, get a solution in place. We just ended up doing a very quick solution with DocuSign integrated with OnBase workflows for accepting the PPP applications, because we just needed to be there as fast as possible to be able to, remember the big rush was the money was going to run out really quickly. So we wanted to make sure we got as much of that funding for our local businesses as possible. So we had to switch gears and just pivot to get as many people involved in helping get those PPP applications through as quickly as possible. We also then, for the forgiveness now, we have gone with Encino for a solution for that, but we just weren't far enough along way back in March. We also just had to do the same things with DocuSign, rolling out across the business. We were using it in a very small scale, so we just accelerated within, like you said, Alex, a couple of weeks, really across all lines of business, so the customers could do electronic signatures for everything from mortgages to lending to retail accounts, all of that very, very quickly. And really, so I think we have continued on. We're on the right path with our digital transformation and with new things for customers and internal for the employee and customer experience that we tried to continue, but we also had to shift and kind of put some things on hold as we move forward. So it was tough. It's been a challenging year to balance it all.
Wow. I got to tell you, you had an aggressive roadmap for 2020 to put all that in place. So hats off. And then to have COVID on top of that, that's amazing. It really is.
Thank you. Yeah, we're proud of the work. And we actually did go live with Salesforce MVP and have continued on with additional phases. And we did go live with an MVP approach for small business commercial lending with Encino. So we did accomplish quite a bit.
That's awesome. That's great. Diane, from your perspective, what was on your roadmap at Penn Community and what changed because of COVID?
Well, our story is pretty similar to what Alex talked about. We had DocuSign and we had a business online banking conversion on the schedule. And as both other speakers said, DocuSign came top of the list. We had to get that done very quickly to support PPP. And that's where we used it first. Of course, it was a game changer in other areas as well. So that was a big win. And we found actually that we ended up focusing as much on process as on applications, because I think someone mentioned we had a flood of customer calls. So we had to be able to do things on the phone that we had never done via phone before. We had the digital tools, we had the mobile tools, but we didn't have great processes for handling customer inquiries over the phone to get things done one-stop shopping. So they could call and get it done. So we take for granted, you have an ID, you have a signature, and we have all these tools to do that electronically, but we hadn't necessarily deployed them into the right processes. So that was really our quick focus, and our quick win was really to look at those kind of things and make changes there. The other thing that had some big impacts that was helpful right away was to increase limits. So we went out on remote deposit capture and quickly raised those limits so that we used our anomaly detection and our fraud systems rather than inconveniencing customers who needed to get their deposits in remotely. So that's really where our focus ended up shifting from putting new applications into place into figuring out how to best leverage the ones we had.
Diane, it's very interesting because, we always talk about people, process, and technology, and everybody focuses on the technology. But you focused not only on that, but on the process. So processes changed. And because of those processes changed, you leveraged some of the technology you had, but you needed the people to execute the new processes. So you guys did a great job of pivoting from in that standpoint.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bob Deagle, a little different story for an all digital bank. What was on your roadmap and what changed, if anything?
Yeah, great question, Jim. We were built to manage a national customer database of about 1.5 million customers that are active. So we were always in tune with digitizing that experience, removing friction. So much of our roadmap for 2020 stayed the same as it related to where we were taking our customer-facing technology. What changed was, for example, we outsourced our call center, and our call center has a hook into our core to be able to provide customer information, and our call centers were impacted by COVID. So we were literally shutting down centers and trying to find a safe way to implement work from home technologies, not just for our employees. We had a good process for our employees, but for our third party employees, and to make sure that we passed the InfoSec sniff test, to make sure that, not that it just looked good on the surface, but it was really safe, it was protective, and, give you an idea, as we're managing like 3 million calls, inbound calls a year, some to the IVR. So we had good IVR technology, but a lot to the rep. We had some infrastructure changes on our roadmap, office to office, some additional video that we were looking to do, and we parked that, and we turned our attention to, similar to what Alex had mentioned, on accelerating Microsoft enhancements and bringing Teams in and rolling that out through the organization rather rapidly. So we did have to pivot, but it also helped. It helped play into our sweet spot when customers were trying to decide who they were going to bank with next. We found that they were picking digital banks, folks that were established in the space, and so we were able to take advantage of that.
Bob, that makes sense. And you brought up a great point about third parties. So a lot of us, when things like this happen, we try to pivot internally. But when there's a third party that is a major part of your process and a major part of your customer experience, that third party has to now execute. So managing third parties, I think in COVID, I think has been a very challenging experience for everybody, and especially for somebody like Bank Mobile that basically relies on an outbound or a call center that's outsourced. So very interesting, very interesting. Congratulations on being able to pivot real quickly with that.
Thanks.
So Bob, I'll stay with you on the next question. So we talked about internally what we did. What about external facing customer solutions? What have you guys put in place to help digitize your customers' experience even more so, whether it's new products or services during COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about the consumer set in my previous update, but we also have a commercial customer target base. We service over 700 higher education campuses. We've got about 1/3 of the enrolled students in the U.S. pass through our electronic doors, our Bank Mobile doors. In a service we provide to those schools, it's a cash management service. We call it refund management. And what it does is it facilitates the money from the Department of Education into the pockets of the students. And so those universities and higher education schools, we spent a good deal of time partnering with them on a one-to-one basis because they were off campus. They literally had shut their doors and they were trying to transition from an on-campus education to a remote education curriculum. A number of schools were ready for that, but a number of schools were not. So we were able to leverage our sales tools for those universities. We implemented a product called Client Point that gave us online libraries of content, proposals, videos. And we pushed out a lot of self-help. So where we may have learned something on the West Coast in the schools that were hit early, we were sharing with our East Coast partners what to expect. And even though there was only a week or two delay as COVID swept across the country, we felt like we were right there. We were those subject matter experts for our business clients, our school clients. And some of the other things that we did was we implemented some other better cash management tools with those universities. We move about $10 billion a year for them. And so we took the opportunity to enhance the overall cash management and money movement of that process. So we got a lot of kudos and feedback from those schools afterwards. As the dust began to settle and we went into the summertime and then the fall, some of those schools are still remote. And the processes and changes we made to support them were really helpful in our relationship management.
That's great, Bob. And I'm sure that your customers, all of your clients really appreciated you adding value and sharing those best practices that, you start in the West Coast, going to the East Coast to really help them succeed. Because, as we all know, if our clients don't succeed during this, we're in trouble. So you guys did a great job of managing that client experience. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks. Yep.
Diane, how about from your perspective, Penn Community, what did you guys put in place to help digitize that customer experience? Any new products, services?
Yeah, we had a couple of things that happened. We were fortunate in that we had just rolled out a new website late January, and that website had capabilities that we didn't have before, including more robust appointment setting, better online chat, better, easier capabilities for putting out communications and information. So that was all really very helpful to us to have that readily available when we rolled into COVID. The other one I had mentioned earlier was the business online banking. We converted to Digital Insights platform, which has a very robust mobile capability that didn't exist on our old business banking platform. So that was really also, as I think someone else mentioned, the customers were very happy to have additional capabilities that weren't there, that they could manage their business and do their transactions remotely a lot easier using the mobile capabilities. And finally, on the consumer side, just recently we rolled out a product called Savvy Money, and that is a credit score capability that they can monitor their credit reporting and their credit scores. And that has been popular beyond what we projected. Really has been very, very interesting to our customers, and they've adopted it very quickly.
Oh, that's excellent. And Diane, I think, with the live chat, perfect timing for that, right?
Mhm.
As well as, the credit score functionality seems like it's in big favor with your customer base. That's awesome. Two great features.
Yep.
Before I ask Annette the same question, Larson, I believe we have a question from the audience.
Yes, we have a question from one of the attendees, right? The question was around what website content management systems, right, do your banks use, or do you use website content management?
Okay. Diane, you want to take that since we were on you, if that's okay?
Sure, we use WordPress, and that was part of our new website.
Perfect. How about you, Bob Deagle? Do you from your perspective?
Yeah, we're using WordPress as well, but we're actually making the move to bring that in-house and using a tool called Webflow.
Webflow. Okay. Annette, I'll ask you the same question, if that's okay. What content management system?
Today we use a tool called Ectron, but we are going to be moving to Salesforce Experience Cloud, which used to be called Community Cloud, and really hoping to get it all on the Salesforce platform and tightly integrated in with Marketing Cloud and FSC and everything for more of that one-to-one experience with our customers, one-to-one marketing and one-to-one messaging and delivery of content specifically to them versus kind of a static website.
Makes sense. And Annette, since we're talking, how about we go back to the original question about digitizing customers' experience and products and services that you may have rolled out during COVID? Can you share with us some of the things you may have done?
Sure. So I mentioned already about DocuSign. We use Webex to do video conferencing with our customers so they don't have to come into the branches or into the facilities. I mentioned for PPP, the original solution was a DocuSign kind of integrated with our website, something we create ourselves in OnBase, but we then put in Encino's so they can to the Encino portal to apply for forgiveness and upload all their documentation and get status updates on that. And we use that internally to process those as well. Really what we are in the midst of doing now is taking our Salesforce and Encino strategy to the next level, where now we're going to roll out in 2021 and even beginning this year onto the next levels of Encino's customer portal, their partner portal, as well as deposit account opening online and in branch. And we're also with the Experience Cloud from Salesforce in the process of starting to develop a more comprehensive one-stop shopping, if you will, single pane of glass for our customers, where they can certainly get to all the functionality that our online banking, vendor provides, get to online banking, get to our platform for our wealth platform that customers come to, as well as a number of other that are disjointed right now out there, all under one umbrella, but also add a lot of additional self-serve capabilities and more reporting of all of their accounts, whether those are mortgages or consumer lending, commercial lending, retail accounts, what have you, all under one place. So we're not all the way there yet, but we have some great plans and we're starting to pursue those.
Fantastic. Once again, an aggressive roadmap. You guys are really going on full court press, that's for sure. Thanks for sharing. Alex, I'll throw a couple questions at you now. So let's go back to content management system. Do you want to share with us what Customers Bank utilizes?
Sure, it's WordPress with a marketing firm that helps us manage that, and certainly the plan is very much similar to Annette's, the Experience Cloud from Salesforce. And we keep asking ourselves a question, why is online banking platform the place that our customers log into for the first time? Like when our customers come to log in somewhere, they log into online banking. Why not have them log into the Experience community portal where we can do other things for them besides just showing them their accounts and letting them move money? Maybe promote a customer to the customer community, maybe run Google ads on the site. I don't know, right? But having that platform in our hands gives us the opportunity to only be limited by our creativity, not by online banking vendor.
Makes sense. And Alex, from a product and service standpoint, anything new that you guys put out for your customers in 2020?
A couple of things, and it of course started out with PPP, right? Nobody had PPP on their roadmap, so that was kind of like a new spin on the product. But in the middle of the PPP loan underwriting, we really kind of like began to see another customer segment, right? So in addition to consumer, commercial, we now see fintechs as the customer that we serve as well. So part of our PPP loan volume came from a handful of fintech partners that brought us billions of dollars of PPP loans. And some of those relationships were super easy to onboard. Some of them were challenging. So the new product that's maybe not a traditional banking product, but the new offering that was originated in our bank is ability to support fintechs through APIs. So that going forward, it is not a Herculean task to onboard the relationship, but it may be a 2-week driving session of API developers on either side, and we're fully integrated, right? We spend more time on legal contracts as opposed to technology integration work.
Sure.
And of course, some of these things were digital deposit accounts for new customer segments that we previously have not addressed. So there's a number of channels that we opened up that brought in a good volume of deposits for us.
Makes sense. And I think API, the way you leverage it in order to help with speed of execution, I think was critical to your success when it comes to all the, I think it was $5 billion of PPP loans brought on board. So.
Just over $5 billion, that's correct.
Yeah, great. Alex, sticking with you, internally, we talked about collaboration, communication, and productivity. Any specific tools that you would like to share that, most CEOs are worried about people working remotely and their productivity? Anything that you've put in place at customers to help measure that or to help collaborate?
Sure. So in one regard, we got lucky that our default mode of computing devices was a laptop, right? So when everybody had to go home, they already had a laptop. VPN was always part of our disaster recovery strategy, so people could work from home. But to enable Teams for everybody was transformational. And it really took, with Teams, we started producing reports of how many minutes and meetings and chat sessions people had. And then within weeks, we had like millions of chats and minutes per month for the company. So showing that to our executive team has really taken the pressure of them asking, are my people being productive? I need to get them back to the office so they can actually do their work. We've demonstrated that people are working while they're not in the office. Like, look at all, like, just maybe they're not, at least they're talking, right? They're talking to each other nonstop. Hopefully it's about work. One piece of technology that we haven't heard mentioned a lot, but was pretty critical for us is Meraki Devices. And this is basically a little piece of hardware that we deployed to homes of specific individuals who required something better than VPN. We essentially extended our corporate network into their home. So if they plug in the phone, a printer, or a laptop into that box, they were physically in our office, right? So that better quality of connection, better connectivity, some critical functions like wire room, for example. All of the wire folks have these in their homes. That's been fantastic for us.
Wow, that's exciting. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people can benefit from that. Thanks, Alex. Annette, how about from your perspective? What tools for communication, collaboration, productivity? What did you guys put in place?
Yeah, some of the same things Alex talked about. Really, just our push was on. We went before COVID. We had about 40% of our workforce that could work from home if they wanted to once in a while, or out at a customer site, to over 80% really overnight. So putting in place just the technical solutions for people to be able to work productively from home. But then obviously, Webex, things of that nature became critical. Cisco Jabber we already had in place, so that's helpful for instant messaging internally. But also within the Salesforce platform, we just rolled out a few months ago case management. So managing the customer requests and making sure that those all can be tracked appropriately and collaboratively worked on across lines of business and across departments and things, so nothing falls through the cracks when people aren't sitting right next to each other, has been a big help. We also continue to expand that to other departments and other areas and add additional automation around that, as well as just Salesforce Chatter. People have really loved to be able to talk to each other for that synergy across the lines of business, of talk about work on customers together through Chatter and other things. I would say also we use just Outlook and just the normal tools, right? We just migrate that to the cloud, but we also use SharePoint and OneNote and things like that. And we use a tool called Workfront for project management to everybody from a task management standpoint as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Annette. Thanks for sharing. Diane, how about at Penn Community Bank?
Well, it sounds like we're using a lot of the same tools that Annette is using. We're using actually Webex Teams, not Microsoft Teams. So just to make that distinction, I'm not sure when we talk about Teams which one it is, but that's the one we used. And for us, we had that in place prior. However, very few people really took advantage of it. And of course, that has flipped on its head. Now, there are very few people that aren't using it because it allows for, screen sharing and onboarding team members and training and all that collaborative work that needs to be done while everybody's working from home. So that's been a really important tool for us. We also had Webex teleconferencing in place, but again, not as heavily used, and it's gotten a lot more use. We also use the Jabber phones as well from Cisco. So those are some of the big tools that we use for collaboration.
Great, Diane, thanks for sharing. It's amazing how people have to learn to use what they already had, right?
Uh-huh.
and it was eye-opening.
Because we're all in place pre-COVID.
Yep, I'm sure. Bob, I mean, Bank Mobile's a development shop, so I'm sure you guys had a lot of tools in place. Anything that was leveraged even more so during COVID?
The same as what the other presenters had said. I think what our real lesson learned there, Jim, and folks on the phone, was making sure that people had quick how-to guides, retraining or training folks on really how to leverage the technology. So, when we started, we were Webex, Zoom, we were playing with Teams, and when we settled on the technology, we made sure that we got our training and the tone from the top to drive that communication and to tell the organization, these are the tools we're going to use and why we're going to use them. We have an Everbridge application for broad communication that was helpful early on about what was open, what wasn't open. We implemented some scorecarding internally developed, but we'll be looking to move that out and maybe pick up an application for scorecarding so that remote managers could stay in touch, at least from an analytics standpoint, with what's going on in their environment. And then just protocol. Each of the managers was required to meet with their team multiple times in the week. So in that first 90 days, it was really helpful as we transitioned from having 800 plus team members working from home. How do you know that they have what they need or we're keeping in touch? And so it was that discipline of the people side of it to make sure we stayed in touch, to get things settled down, and then the tools really kicked in, and we were able to leverage that and then fine tune the tools that we talked about. So there was a lot that we learned from being remote and having the organization aligned around, hey, there's an opportunity, let's make a recommendation. It goes to product, technology gets changed, tested, and rolled out, and we communicate it back to the line and start over again.
Makes sense, Bob, and it ties right into my next question about change management overall, right? And we talk about people, process, and technology. We've talked a lot about technology here today. But what challenge did you guys face at Bank Mobile with change management in your organization? I mean, this could be from a people side or behavioral side. I mean, just share with us some of your experiences through COVID.
Yeah, sure. So we were fortunate 6 months before, so late 2019, we had really revamped our change management process. We had gone through a very deliberate method of the right governance, committees handling the right issues, making sure that we weren't adding red tape, that we were really trying to streamline the process, satisfy the regulators, yet continue to try and be agile and make changes in the environment. So change control wasn't really challenged that much, and we were fortunate that way. That was just timing. What we had developed worked in a remote way. With people, process, technology, for us, that's a quarterly cycle that we go through. So the operational teams, technology teams meet on a regular basis, and we look at friction points. We look at items that are still being handled manually, maybe in the environment, and we develop cycles of improvement. And so we just needed to learn how to do that remotely. We already had folks in Pennsylvania, some folks in Connecticut, in New York, and then a fairly decent remote workforce. So it wasn't a big challenge to do. And because we were meeting quarterly, we were able to deal with the most current pressing issues. So when COVID hit in March, when we met in April, we were already synthesizing what's the new world look like, and we were starting to ingest that and make changes. So like I said, I think good preparedness, a little bit of luck, but we did pretty good.
That's great. Sounds like you had the protocols in place, and like you said, the challenge or the learning was just trying to do it remotely. So it sounds like you had a really good cycle in place. So that's good. Thank you, Bob. Diane, how about from your perspective?
I think the challenges we faced were actually more on the hardware side than on in any other way, and that's because we're a Citrix shop. So Citrix, it works very well to deploy remotely, but you don't, unlike Alex, I don't have to give someone a laptop to do that. They can do that from any device. However, what we found was, well, you need a webcam because there's so many remote meetings. And, you know, if you have a Chromebook or a thin client, there may not be a webcam attached to it. The other challenge was just monitors. People, particularly in our loan operations area, our mortgage area, which are inundated right now with volume, they're used to having dual monitors so that they can have two things up that they're comparing or working on. And at home, people only had one monitor. So it was really a race to get some of those little tools that sound like pretty minor, a webcam and a monitor, but those are really critical to working remotely and being productive. So that was really where our biggest challenges came from, was really more on the hardware side than the application side.
Now, Diane, that makes sense. I mean, you think about people who didn't realize what they had in their office, right? And from just a screen standpoint, and when they were utilizing multiple monitors and moving remotely, they don't have that anymore. So yeah, I think everybody faced those challenges. So thanks for sharing. That's great. Yep. Annette, how about from you?
I would echo what Diane just said. Yeah, and it's the simple things like that I hadn't thought about when you first asked this question, but that comes to mind now, because really, yeah, people need 2 or 3 monitors at home, so we had to rush to get all that type of stuff and docking stations and all that's interesting. But from the bigger implementation standpoint of the projects we had going on at the time when COVID hit and things, you know, we were doing a very traditional kind of, we had an implementation partner in doing a war room approach, right? So that's the best approach for a strategic project, in my opinion, is really get everybody in a room, roll up your sleeves, lots of whiteboards, especially if you're making critical decisions, business process decisions, other things very, very quickly at a rapid pace. We all of a sudden just had to stop. You know, the implementation partner was remote. All of a sudden, all of us on the team are remote. So just managing through that, not only were we remote, not in the same room and not having that focused time to work on the projects, but also everybody had all these additional responsibilities that they had not planned for or expected, right? So when you have to work, you know, people are working 60 hours a week just to get PPP loans through and loan deferments and all these other things to help the customers, when you had planned on them spending half their time on the project, it became challenging to balance it all, I think. So managing through that, I think, was really the biggest challenge from a COVID standpoint in my mind. So we pushed ahead as quickly as we could. Our teams did an excellent job. They really worked very, very hard. We did end up extending the Encino project about 4 weeks from what our original goal date was, which wasn't too much considering everything else going on with these teams, commercial lending especially, and small business lending, with all these additional responsibilities and constraints that they just did not anticipate for this year. But I think just managing through that and having people have enough time to focus and to really think through decisions and focus on the process side of it, as you said, so we can get the system up and going. But if you don't have all the business process things completely worked out, who's doing what in the system, how's it getting done, all that kind of stuff, obviously that can trip you up. So we that was a challenge for us, just trying to, and still we're still, even we went live in September, we're still trying to work through some of those process things and the efficiencies and stuff still.
Great insight. Thank you for sharing that. And you go back to juggling those priorities and implementations. I mean, PPP, I think everybody had to throw their entire organizations at it just to make it successful, especially from a remote standpoint. So thank you. Alex, how about you? From customers, banks perspective, what were the challenges from a change management perspective in the organization?
Certainly what everyone else has said, and the fact that every hardware supplier, everything was sold out, right? So if you wanted to order something, you couldn't. And as that event started, we were thinking, okay, it's 2 weeks, right? Everybody's going to be back in the office, so grab your laptop, go home, don't take anything else, right? And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, all right, well, how do we basically deliver these monitors now to these individuals? I want to maybe go in a slightly different direction and talk about exams and audits, right? And the examiners very quickly suspended a lot of their activities. And we've managed to actually, working with our internal audit team, to do something similar. We saw it as a quick way to, and we're getting audited all the time. Like IT department is going through 2-3 audits at the same time. How do we create time in our people's lives to actually do this extra work that nobody has thought of? And lucky enough, the audit department accommodated, shifted their schedule, freed up a little bit of time. And really, people came together, right? And maybe that's not a challenge of that environment, but the other side of the coin, that it was really like an experience like I've never had before in terms of people coming together and trying to get through this together.
Yeah. And Alex, you bring up a good point about that I want to expand on a little bit. When every organization builds their business continuity and pandemic plans, how many of us really thought there would ever be a global pandemic? I mean, seriously. So those pandemic plans, I'm sure everybody's flushing them out going, wait a minute, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. So it's amazing how every organization had to pivot because nobody expected to execute their pandemic plan. I can tell you that. So.
Or that pandemic would last a year, right?
Right, exactly.
Right. Quick question, Jim. There's a question from the audience, right? Mainly for Annette, but welcome viewpoints from anybody else as well. Did your team use a specific framework to operate your war room? Are there any tech tools that you use to facilitate collaboration in this process?
For the implementation projects, actually, we we have internal frameworks that we use for project management, but we also relied upon our implementation partner, came in really, and that's why we selected them. They came in with kind of their playbook of how they do this, from design, development, configuration and testing all the way through, because they've done it for many, many banks before. So that was the advantage we had with the particular implementation partner we brought on, because we wanted a very aggressive, very quick go live with an MVP approach, viable product. So we really leveraged their framework, kind of overlaying with our own internal project management controls and governance.
And Annette, I believe you mentioned earlier that you do leverage for project management, you leverage Workfront, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, Jim, got another question for you. Since somebody mentioned they read about the GitLab, it's the largest company using remote workers exclusively, right? So they've had a document 1,000 pages long on how to work remotely, right? Because that's how their company started. So question for the panelists, right? As we went through this COVID process, did any of you look to best practices from other companies on how to best work remotely, right?
Yeah. Alex, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. We went way beyond other companies and best practices, right? We had a group of people who came together on a regular basis, the management team, to really monitor how things are going and develop a playbook of how we're going to operate in this environment. Not only from their networks of HR professionals or operations professionals, but also consulting companies, or like Gartner put out some research around best practices of how to do this. But I think the key was really listening to the teams, right? There were, like, our CEO mandated daily check-ins, right? And in retrospect, makes so much sense, right? Why would you not check in with your people every day or regularly? But that became part of the culture here. So the playbook that was put together, that our HR team kind of like spearheaded that, was very heavily based on the feedback of what they've heard from various teams in this environment and challenges that they experienced.
Great, thanks for sharing that, Alex. Diane, anything from your perspective? Did you guys do anything for working remotely?
Very similar to what Alex talked about. We had very regular calls or meetings online to talk about what was working, what wasn't working, to share across the organization. So if something was working really well in one area, it could become a best practice for the rest of the company, or we could share that. So it really was learning and developing on the fly using both external and internal resources.
Excellent, thank you. Bob Deagle, how about from Bank Mobile's perspective?
Yeah, this will sound a little bit funny, but we had on staff, we had a corporate psychologist. We also had an executive coach that we engaged. And so those two individuals were engaged early on in really understanding the stresses of the organization. They help managers with individual problems, maybe employee problems or COVID scares amongst the staff. And so leveraging subject matter experts, if you will, folks that know how to coach in a crisis was really helpful. And we used a lot of a Harvard Business Review. We have a few subscriptions amongst some of the senior team, and they had published some things prior to COVID about remote relationships, and then they were pretty current on other good articles that were helpful. So we took those, ingested those, and moved out some meaningful points to the management team and the rest of the staff.
Bob, that's an interesting point about utilizing a psychologist and a coach and really trying to connect with the emotional side of the team and your team members to really understand what their challenges are and their fears and their anxiety to be able to cope with that. So very interesting approach. Thanks for sharing. Annette, how about at Canandaigua?
Yeah, so I would ditto what everybody else has said with, certainly the research and management coming together. I will mention a couple things that have been really, really helpful that our employees have really appreciated. Lots and lots of communication, right? I mean, things are changing week to week with what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, what, in New York State, especially with shutdowns, what businesses can be open, what can't be, when you have to quarantine, when you don't, where you can travel, all those type of things. But I think a lot of communication, not just via email and stuff, but we started doing, in the beginning, we started doing daily executive team calls and others in key management, just daily. It's just kind of finger on the pulse of everything. We've now moved to just really once or twice a week for those, but also company-wide calls. So our CEO and our head of HR and others who it was appropriate to speak at different meetings, really just having surveys ahead of time. So what are you worried about? What's on your mind? What's your stress level to the entire company? Submit your thoughts, submit your questions, submit your, survey results of how you're feeling, what's stressing you out, what's not, all that kind of stuff. So really tried to listen to all of the employees and really try to involve in these company-wide calls, Webex, video calls with the entire company. We still do them once a week. So just to make sure everybody knows we have a very, very strong culture here. We really, really care about employees. And I think, one of the most strongest things that the CEO did in the very beginning was just said, we just came out and said, your job is safe. If you have an illness, if this hits you, your family, whatever, or you don't have childcare because the kids' schools are shut down, whatever, we will take care of you. And I think that just helped the stress level and stuff. But I mean, there's people have put in tremendous amount of efforts. There's a lot of stress going on. So I think it's just that communication both ways, listening and communicating back on a regular basis really was really critical and still is.
Makes sense. And I think the approach your CEO took about putting team members and employees first, I think probably helped with your success over this period in dealing with COVID. So that's great. That's great to hear. Great to share. Thank you for that. Alex, I'm going to turn back to you now for a PPP question. I know I heard a little bit from others as well about how they're starting to handle forgiveness, but really want to make sure we have all of our panelists answer this about forgiveness. So how is your organization handling it? Are you putting in new platforms or solutions, technology solutions to help you execute?
Great question. So as I'm sure every other bank in the country got slammed with vendors and partners who wanted to provide the PPP application technology, just like everybody wants to provide a PPP forgiveness technology. Early on, we had no choice, right? We just couldn't act fast enough. So we did partner with someone to help us with applications. But from day one, we knew forgiveness was coming, right? So it gave us an opportunity to kind of like put our technology team best foot forward. And at the end of the day, we decided to build it ourselves on the technology stacks that we already had from Salesforce and Encino. So it was implementing a SKU from Encino, opening up the customer-facing portal to collect documents. And the reason we chose to do it ourselves because we didn't see this process as like a throwaway technology, right? It's not, sure, at some point forgiveness is going to be over, but the need to interact with the customers digitally is not going to go away. And this was on our 2020 plan anyway, it just happened much faster. Sorry, this was in our 2021 plan. Instead, it happened in 2020. And from the ability to collect the documentation and the application from the customer, there is an Excel file, right? Nothing sexy about that, but locked down Excel file, which we then, through MuleSoft technology and magic, right, like extract all the key data points, put it into Salesforce, do a quick review, and submit it straight to SBA via APIs. So this is, we do not retype any of the original information from the customer ever for the forgiveness process. That was pretty exciting to do. That was really kind of like the beginning of the brave new world where all of our processes act that way.
That's excellent. And to do it in a short time period, Alex, is a compliment to you and your team for being able to execute that. So thank you for sharing. Annette, how about from your perspective? I know you mentioned Encino as well before. I just want to confirm what you're leveraging for forgiveness.
Yeah, for forgiveness, we are using the Encino portal, it does have an API to the SBA to submit the applications and everything. So that is turning out to be a good selection for us. We made the exact opposite choice in the very beginning just because of where we were in the Salesforce realm of things. We weren't ready yet to build out. As Alex mentioned, they could go faster by building themselves, going with another tool up front. And then building out, we weren't ready to build out. So we selected Encino for the forgiveness, but in the very beginning, our concern was just, we wanted to have that application up there for customers the very first morning that PPP went live as a program. So in a matter of 2 days, we could build something in DocuSign versus going and evaluating a vendor, evaluating a solution. It would have taken too long to implement. So we just did it ourselves, homegrown in the front end. And now that we had more time for forgiveness, we did go through evaluating the vendor. We already had a relationship with Encino, but what did they have to offer for this particular solution? But I will tell you, it was a challenge because we didn't do it the same way all the way through. We've had a lot of work in data validation, data conversion, everything to get it to kind of retrofit into the solution since we didn't use the Encino solution on the front end. No,
that makes sense. Makes sense. And it's interesting how quickly you had to do that evaluation to get this tool up and running for the forgiveness process. So.
And the SBA kept, as everybody knows, the SBA kept changing things. So it wasn't like it was something that here it is 6 months from now, this is going live. It was tomorrow we're going with this. And then they were changing the form, I think that night even before they went live. And then a couple times since then, and the rules kept changing, the guidelines. So you had to have a very flexible solution.
Yeah. You're right. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Diane, how about Penn Community Bank? What are you using for forgiveness?
Well, like Annette, we went external. We didn't have, because of all the changes, we just didn't have the resources to keep up with the SBA and everything that was happening. So we're actually using Fiserv's portal for forgiveness. It's working very well. Also has the APIs to the SBA. We've begun processing. We've had several payments come in already from the SBA to pay off loans. So it's working very well.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Diane. Now, Bob, I'm not going to ask you the PPP question, but I'm going to turn to the last question that I'll ask all the panelists is, what's next? So what's on the roadmap for 2021 from a digital transformation standpoint? And are you looking to buy versus build? Just give us an idea about your approach heading into 2021.
Yeah, happy to. Actually, we've been in build mode for the last 3 years, and we are sort of coming back to center on better evaluating whether or not build or buy is the right choice. So that for sure is a 2021 initiative for us. We'll look at integration layers to our core system. What we recognize is we got to be able to plug in technology more rapidly and bring it to market faster and not create a 9-month integration project Integration should be easier, and we're going to want to solve that. We'll do some more things with AI, machine learning. We have a tool, Data Robot, that we've had a couple good successes with, so we're looking to expand that out. We have a couple years left on our Teradata cloud contract, and they've got some interesting analytics that we're going to partner with them on. So it's a busy year. We're excited.
That's awesome. Great. Thanks for sharing, Bob, and good luck for you and the team in 2021 with everything on your roadmap.
Thank you.
Diane, how about Penn Community? What's the roadmap look like, and buy versus build approach? What do you think?
Well, we are relatively new to Salesforce. We rolled it out the first quarter of 2020. So really our focus is on leveraging that a lot more in the coming year. So for example, Marketing Cloud is something we're going to be putting in place in early 2021. And we're looking for some process improvements that we're adding and a lot of reporting capabilities, dashboards, those kind of things that we have some of, but we have lots of opportunities to leverage that data and use it more on our day-to-day management. So Salesforce is a big part of our 2021 roadmap.
Excellent. So it's about adoption, about usage, about really getting the best return out of your investment in the platform.
Absolutely.
Right. Thanks, Diane. Thanks for sharing. Annette, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, some of the same things that Diane mentioned, really, since we're so new to the Salesforce platform and nCino is additional phases, getting more out of it. Really everything, as I mentioned before, kind of extending things out to the customer with customer portal and partner portals and the deposit account opening, as well as just creating that custom customer portal that we're talking about. But we also have some other things that have to get done, like CECL. So we are going to be implementing nCino's solution for that and portfolio management, as well as some additional follow-up things that we want to do to help our call center to be more efficient on the Salesforce platform with CTI integration and looking at some other things like Amazon Connect and things. A little early now, but we're looking to the future for those type of things. So certainly we're kind of a half, I would say it's a hybrid approach. You know, we're getting on the platform, we're buying to get on the platform, if you will, and some of these tools that plug in, but we've also invested in MuleSoft, Einstein Analytics, and obviously just to be able to use Lightning and other tools to be able to develop ourselves. So we are getting onto the platform so that we have more freedom and flexibility to develop our own things, take our own destiny in our own hands, if you will, to be able to have the freedom to very quickly enhance and iterate the functionality for our employees and our customers in that world. So it's kind of a mixture for us. Where we're hoping we're still going to be buying, so to speak, some things to jumpstart us and get base functionality in place. But we also are expanding what we're doing from an integration standpoint, from an analytics standpoint, from a visualizations and reporting and standpoint, as well as just that customer portal being kind of a custom thing for us.
Great. And that, once again, an aggressive roadmap that you have for 2021 to match your 2020. So thank you for sharing and best of luck to you and Canandaigua in 2021.
Thank you.
Alex, last but not least.
So, of course, a similar story, and what we're trying to do is look at it from the customer perspective, right? How can we map the customer journeys so that the way we use these technologies are not driven by our perception or our likes, but really by the demand that we see from our customers? And one thing that I think may be slightly different for us is that having discovered that other customer segment of fintechs, 2021 is the year for us to figure out how do we actually nurture that customer segment? How do we continue to play there? Do we rent our charter to them? Do we do embedded banking within various platforms? Just a lot of that fintech integration work on the dance card for next year.
That makes sense. And it's an interesting customer segment to target. So thank you, Alex. Good luck to you and the team in 2021.
Thank you.
Folks, I want to thank today's panelists for sharing their experiences and best practices with all of our community banking, peer banks and credit unions. I think this information is incredibly valuable, and we truly appreciate your time. The Fortimize team would like to thank everyone who joined today's call, and I think we all can agree that digital transformation, it's not an option anymore, but a true necessity. The team at Fortimize can help you through digital transformations with a proven roadmap to evolve your bank of tomorrow today. So to speak with one of the client advisors, please send a note in the Q&A section or in the chat function and let us know if you're interested, and we'll schedule a follow-up call. Our next event in the Fortimize Focus series is going to be in December, and it's going to be a roundtable discussion with limited amount of seats. So please let us know if you're interested in talking directly to peer community banks and credit unions about today's critical technology issues. Take care, everyone, and please have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.